Hello viewers, welcome to the show. It's the Business X-Ray show. Every Sunday, 3 p.m. we are here to bring you a number of, topics, subjects that, impact you or sit close to you as a business person. And today, of course, it wouldn't be fair to talk about anything else but, the budget, because this week, this Sunday concludes what you'd call the budget week. The budget was read on Thursday. And it had very interesting, proposals. Of course, we already knew it because it was passed much earlier under the new culture now, which was adopted. So the day of the reading, we already know what is involved or what is, entailed in the budget. So this time round, our topic is going to be looking at how this budget impacts you as an SME, or how you can relate, or it relates to you as an SME. Therefore, the topic that we have of putting the 2020, 21, 2022 financial budget into context for the SMEs. And that's where we're going to dwell. We want to really look at all those gray areas, all those areas that might appear, hard, to understand, or that may not be very clear for you as a small and medium enterprise. And then the micro operator as well, to get a full understanding and appreciation of, how this budget really relates to you. It's a very interesting document. Of course, government is prioritizing, is looking at the area of industrialization. That is key. And of course, the involvement of many Ugandans as possible. I'm now extracting this from the theme of the budget, but then quite heavy also on agro-industrialization, because most of our manufacturing or industrialization, if you put it that way, is anchored on agro-processing or value addition in that particular space. Of course, the minister, the state minister planning, the new state minister for planning, that is Honorable Gorovi from Tenjeru, really highlighted at the beginning or in the preamble of the budget some of the major contributors to the country's coffers or kitty. And it was quite interesting that agriculture really remains up there. Looking at commodities like coffee, which is one of the biggest forex earners for the country, almost $500 million, especially at a time when we all know what happened to the tourism industry. Tourism had climbed to about 1.6 billion US dollars. It is now here and there because we all know what happened when COVID hit. And in there, we saw dairy. Dairy is doing fairly well because it's about over 200 million US dollars. And then we see tea and a couple of other items, including fish, by the way. Fish is also another one, still sitting within the region of 200 US dollars for the year 2021, 2022. But in all this, the reason why I'm pointing out those numbers in particular is to try and underline the importance of the agriculture sector for this economy. And I know there are many SMEs, there are many businesses, both small, micro, medium, that sit within this particular docket. And for you, therefore, this budget becomes very important, to understand. And of course, we also appreciate the fact that you're a major contributor to the country's coffers. Now, with me in the studio, as usual, we have our resident coach, Charles from Enterprise Uganda. Charles, you're most welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, and I'm so glad to be here talking about the budget in this month of the budget, and happy to be with my colleagues.
Very good. And we also, it would be unfair not to have a tax expert in the house, because we're talking matters budget. Really, when we talk about the budget, we're talking about where money is going to come from and how money is going to be spent. And we all know that one of the biggest sources of funding for government is tax. So we have Sarah here. Sarah is our tax expert in the house. Sarah, you're most welcome to the show. Please introduce yourself to the
Thank you, and
viewers.
Good evening, viewers. I'm Sarah Chelangat from Ernst & Young, and I'm an associate director in tax. I'm happy to be part of this panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sarah. It's been a while. I know the last time I had a discussion with Sarah is quite some years back.
Yeah.
And I think with Charles too.
Very true.
I know some of our ardent viewers could still recollect that.
Yeah.
Always committed to put these things into context for you. Charles, the budget week, quite a number of developments happened.
Very true.
I don't know what touched your nerve.
I think first and foremost, I saw the courage we had as a country to keep the budget envelope up there. The previous year we were at around about 40. We are now at 42 trillion.
Okay.
We have gone to 44.7.
Yes.
And we're also saying that of this figure, we are going to collect a figure closer to what we were collecting before COVID. About 22 trillion coming from the domestic
sources.
sources. That again tells you that there's a picture government is having, which is saying that it wants to believe that the economy is able to finance about 50% of what we are going to be spending. So in terms of the envelope is big. It's also interesting that increasingly a lot more money is being put into economic empowerment schemes.
Yeah.
But it is these allocations that I feel the viewers out there would want some comments on. Because me, as a person who has championed the growth of enterprises,
Yes.
I have a conviction which says that a government like Uganda is like an enterprise which is playing but in the bigger world economy. So we're preparing this enterprise called Uganda to go into the bigger market called the world economy,
Yes.
and must go there and win. Now, if it is to go there, one of the instruments it uses to achieve that is a budget. But in the traditional sense of looking at an enterprise, when you produce a budget, the first thing is you must be convinced about the assumptions behind it. Number two, implement it. And when you're implementing it, you want to say, this is what I intended to achieve with this budget. So there's implementation, which you can bring an auditor general to confirm that the money was spent well. But two, as you implement, monitor to see, has there been impact? Did you achieve what you intended to achieve? Three, can you communicate that impact? Once you do that, this instrument becomes a driving force for the enterprise in the global economy called the world economy. So I have some comments I want to make just around those areas on how can we improve the benefits of the budgeting process.
Very good.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Sarah, we'll move to you. First of all, we treasure your presence here because
Deeply.
we know that, from where this sits where you actually sit proper. Just, if you to give an overview of the 2021-2022 financial year budget, what are the key points that you would extract for the SME who's watching this show? This show is dedicated to the development and growth of small and medium enterprises. We can also attach the micro operators as well.
I think the budget, the way it has been read by the Minister of Finance, looks quite well spread in terms of the programs.
Yeah.
You will note that this year the sector-based budgeting was not done.
Okay.
Instead, government chose to look at program-based budgeting. And in this program-based budgeting, they are looking more into service delivery and looking at the specific aspects of the services that should go to the people in the villages, in the districts, etc. What I pick from the SMEs is one, the fact that government has now looked into industrialization more. I mean, agriculture has put a lot of money now in agriculture.
True.
1.6 trillion into agriculture. And in this 1.6 trillion, they are looking into taking this money into the villages and trying to look into agro-processing, having silos in different villages, ensuring that the handling process within the agricultural sector is done well, and then marketing, feeder roads, etc. So even when you look at the budget for road network, they are still looking into the feeder roads that will feed into the rural areas where these people have to pick their crops. What is still very key and which government should really look more into is in terms of the supply chain. You may have a bumper harvest, but these farmers really able to sell these products? If you are going to get silos, because they are talking of putting silos everywhere, and then dryers for people to really, that handling process is very key. You saw how Kenya was able to stop our maize exports because of aflatoxins. So these are really very key. And the finance minister was talking about modern border points being opened in the different sectors, like Swam, and in the west, Mutukula, and then Duakaka. You have modern border points, and in those border points, they should be testing centers for aflatoxins. This should start right from the handling process when the maize leaves the garden. So that is there. And then there is also now the Emioga Fund, which is also still part of this budget, and that still looks into SMEs, putting them into circles, supporting them into a revolving fund, which is really good. And then you are looking at the new parish model, which is also another way of decentralizing the services, taking back the services to the people in the districts,
and the
the constituencies. It really looks very brilliant. This budget looks very brilliant, and I see it achieving really what government wants. But like what my colleague Mr. Ochita has said, we really want the implementation. And implementation should only not be told to us in the next budget event of June 2022, but we expect that in every quarter or even every month, as government rolls out this project, we are able to track this budget and say, this is what it has done, this is what it has done, this is what it has done. Then also to the SME again, government has put quite a good number of or a portion of this budget into infrastructure for electricity. And that sounds so well, because currently, as you note, in the rural areas, connection is still free. We expect that if this electricity infrastructure is taken countrywide and all of it is done, then it will really bring very good whatever to the SMEs, because if we can have electricity go up to the rural villages, people can be able to use this for drying their crops, to access and even do some value additions, like even making juice, and you are able to sell, or buying a refrigerator and you are able to cool your milk and be able to sell the next day. It's really an important aspect. The other one is on digitalization of the economy. There is some good money also that is going into digital infrastructure, looking at the entire country to make sure that it's digitally connected. That is very, very important. As you will note, internet and data is becoming a very, very key resource in the midst of the pandemic, and the fact that now many people are working at homes, and even specifically on these SMEs, they can do a lot in form of marketing their crops in the internet, in form of getting information to help them. If they are farmers, there is a lot of information in the internet that they can get regarding even the type of pesticides that they can, type of fertilizers, researching on the rains, when should they plant their crops. All this information is available in
captured there.
Yeah, thank you.
Hold it there, Sarah. Thank you. Charles, one of the things that has touched me is the allocation to the agriculture sector.
That's correct.
I think that was a decision pointed in the right direction.
Very true indeed.
Yes. Now, the question now becomes which areas are being touched.
Yeah.
Because Sarah here touched a little on a very important aspect.
Yeah.
That is markets.
Yeah.
And then two, there's the issue of, because that's where she brought out the issue of the Kenyan issues that we had. It's linked to the markets, but then also producing something that is competitive, or produce from the agricultural sector that can actually sell.
Yeah.
And it brings in issues of standards. It brings in issues of strengthening the entire value chain. I don't know, from where you sit, do you feel, you know, this budget really communicating the full agricultural value chain language?
Very good. First of all, the theme of the budget is a very interesting one. It says industrialization for inclusive growth to generate employment
Yes.
and to generate wealth. Industrialization for inclusive growth, generating employment, generating wealth. Now, if you are going to industrialize, you must know that first and foremost, you are not going to be the first to produce an industrial product that you are going to sell. So you need to really analyze what have been your bottlenecks. And for an effective industrializing nation, production and productivity must be addressed effectively. No more producing for the sake of just saying this is a maize seed. It must be maize seed produced cost effectively to the standards that the industrialist will want. So you have attended to production and productivity. The handling between this producer in the farm until the seed reaches the value addition is another process. You must be able to address all those as well. The budget is being read at an interesting time when we had a big hiccup on a key export to a key market. Maize export was such a big revenue generator for this country. And it had just an aspect of quality handling aspects. In my view, when we now talk about all these points where we're going to be doing the testing, there should have been a very clear budget allocation to the Ministry of Agriculture, to the extension workers, to specifically address mindset change in terms of handling a harvested maize seed or maize crop for the market. And if it is there, there should be now a benchmark that we are going to follow. As my sister Sarah said, a good budget must have periodic assessment and measurement moments. It is now 3 months. Where are we in terms of aflatoxin? It is now 6 months. Where are we in terms of restocking the northern region, Acholi, Lango, Teso, using 200 billion? Where are we? It's now 9 months. We're supposed to have put a warehouse in Inebi. Where are we with that intervention? So yes, I want us to begin to know that as we look at the budget, we need to have specific benchmarks, specific points where we now start to ask ourselves about achieving that industrialization and achieving it as a business with your own right to play in the international arena. Kenya is just like us. But if Kenya can begin to query what we are producing, what will Europe say?
That's true.
Kenyans are like us. And they are saying, please kindly, there is a disease in the maize crop. Can you do something about that? There is even the issue of adding value to peanut butter. This country has been importing peanut. We should not be saying, how much have we been importing in terms of peanut butter? When we put a value-adding plant now in Soroti, what will be the replacement volume we expect from that factory? And I mention this because it's not first time we do these beautiful, well thought out kind of projects, but fail to achieve the impact aspect of those interventions. The Soroti fruit factory, for example, has had issues in terms of volume. And we're still having people saying, I'd rather than have packed juice coming all the way from South Africa. But sometimes packed juice coming from the neighborhood in Nairobi. Where is the challenge? So I really feel that some of the comments, like the way our sister here said, incremental funding. Last year, what did we do with industrial parks? We managed to build them. What is the missing component for them to start bringing us artisans that can make welded materials, that can make good carpentry pieces? Incremental funding, instead of just coming up with something new, something new, something new. There is something you need to do to improve, for example, the abattoir at Bombo. The abattoir at Bombo wants 300 animals slaughtered daily. They can hardly slaughter 100. Where is now the missing link? In the budget, we now go backwards and just say there is an issue with the supply of the animals. And if there is an issue, is it the artificial insemination we need to address? Is it the issue of ticks we need to address? What is it? Incremental funding to make projects deliver the intended benefits, as opposed to saying there's a new one now here, then there's another new one here, then there's another new one here. What happened to the previous ones?
I hear you. Good point. Good questions to ask. I remember on the issue you talked about on actually that particular one, we used to have a unit in the Prime Minister's office.
Yeah.
The budget implementation unit was something like that, which was
Correct.
supposed to see that the budget
Correct.
promises actually, you know.
Very, very
But
true.
I think it was quite...
Budget implementation unit, National Planning Authority should be communicating. These fellows are doing the planning, and in their planning, impact is the ultimate delivery. It's not the grand plans. Ultimately, we are saying inclusive growth,
Inclusive growth.
employment, and economic transformation or wealth generation.
And actually that speaks to the country's aspiration
Yes,
in the National Development Plan 3
yes,
and
Yeah,
ultimately Vision 2040.
yes.
So that's why your point now becomes valid. All these have to be aligned, and someone has to see that
Yeah.
they are aligned.
Correct. Because as I go back to the analogy of private sector, it is extremely painful to see an SME that was selling 200 plates of food 5 years ago. It was selling 200 plates of food. 2 years later, it's again selling 200 plates of food. Last year also, it sold 200 plates of food.
Yeah.
That one has stagnated.
Yeah.
And you are blocking the flow of the private sector. We would want an SME to quickly supply this, then supply this, and keep moving. Equally for a country. You have been supplying the few bags of maize seed. The next one should not just be a few bags. Should be tonnage upon tonnage.
I hear you.
And not just in the neighborhood, but whoever now wants that cereal. 2, that cereal is also needed for feeds. We should be now starting another plant somewhere that begins to tap into these volumes that are growing. So that kind of explosion should be associated with our planning, our budgeting, and our impact assessment.
Very good. Sarah, let me come back to you. We're looking at a budget of 44 trillion. And about half of that is going to be collected domestically, which is quite huge.
Given the background we are in
The
now.
circumstances, COVID-19 and everything. And also the fact that the last financial year,
We
actually the
did hit the
taxman
target.
failed to hit the target, I think by over 2 trillion shillings.
Yeah.
About that.
So, what are your views, or what is your view about, what are your expectations? Do you see us, for starters, before I go into the other details, do you see us beating that target? And where do you see the taxman mobilizing the resources needed? Because all this we are talking about will actually need this money to be effected.
Actually, if you look at the performance of the economy, it has been very difficult for the taxman to hit that budget.
Yeah.
One, the business community or the taxpayer who pays this tax has struggled in 2020 with the pandemic, and then generally the economy has not really grown. If you look at the GDP growth rate has been coming down. And we even project, based on the World Bank reports and IMF reports on economic outlook, we project a decrease of about 3.2% to about 3.3% growth
Okay.
in this coming financial year of 2022. So if you, from a very practical perspective, okay, government has actually reduced that. It was supposed to be 45 trillion, but they have now put it at 44 trillion. But we are looking at them from a very practical perspective. They should have even come further down because we are really going to struggle to look for the sources of this money. Already debt is choking, and a taxpayer is being left with a very big debt burden. There is a lot of payments in terms of interest payments that are supposed to be made out of this budget. Those are like fixed. So even if government is to mobilize these revenues domestically through treasury bills and treasury bonds, it's still a very steep challenge for the government. And domestically, URA has tried to do digitalization through e-tax, introduction of e-freeze, introduction of digital stamps to really try and
we'll have a discussion on that
efficiency,
as well.
make it efficient. But the fact is that the tax base is not increasing.
It's not increasing.
It's still the same taxpayer in the formal sector, the same multinationals paying up these taxes.
Very good point.
So you don't see really a stretch unless, I don't know really. But I'm hoping that maybe they are attempting to tax data will help. But
will help. Well, but we'll discuss about that. I think that's an area we need to look at. Charles, of course, we're talking about the budget is quite strong on the parish model. Or in other words, taking support to the person at the grassroots. Of course, you have the Myoga fund in that mix. You have the parish model. Now, like Sarah rightly puts it, one of our biggest challenges is a small tax base. And it comes out of the fact that a bulk of Ugandans still live not just outside the
money economy,
but then also the taxpayer, the taxman's catchment area. So do you see, for instance, these initiatives like the parish model and that kind of, because if you look at it, it's about taking that service delivery down to the people at the grassroots. You're talking about investment as well and the like. Do you see that then, first of all, touching these people and turning them into businessmen? Because that's the ultimate goal. For them to look at whatever they are doing as not just practices. So we stop talking about the agricultural practice, but the business of agriculture, if you like.
Very correct.
And then being taxable tomorrow.
Very interesting observation or comment. Let me first say this about the general interventions through the economic livelihood programs. A majority of them are aimed at kickstarting and arousing the dormant majority who are not very active in the money economy. And the parish model is aimed at making that a mass crusade. Interestingly, as they go that route, they also bring in the aspect of mindset change. And if only that could be showcased and given more light than people saying money is coming through the circle, each one of you will access some 30 million. The mindset already begins to say, government is distributing money. Line up. Get the money, eat it up, it's your circle. It will just close, nobody will take you to prison. Because they are simply saying, this will go to a circle. And it's meant to give you the capital through which you can begin to lend to each other. And if you learn with a business mindset, and that's key, business mindset. You should have gotten records. Where are you as you go into the circle? What are you doing as you go into the circle? Do you have those records? Do you have those targets? Do you have that ambition? Do you know the market you are going to address? So that element of getting the parish model to take off is something that has got prior experience we got as a country. We gave it a different title. But in the past, we tried similar schemes. MSCL has been having a circle scheme, lending to circles all along. We just didn't call it a parish model. But we're lending at the parish level.
And what is MSL?
Microfinance Support Center Limited. So now we come in and say, let's brand this thing so that the entire country begins to know that there's something that MSL has been doing. So in other words, what I'm saying here is the parish model is brilliant, but should make people work up to midnight. Where are the extension workers that are going to say, we have been dormant for a long, long time. We are going to be checking, I'm going to be charged of 1,000 acres, and I will be monitoring people who are planting coffee. Somebody is on 2 goats. Somebody is into honey. Somebody is into another crop. A parish model, the key element for its success is the management and the technical support we take to the farmers. And we need to tell people that it is not about accessing money, it's about accessing a market. And accessing a market has got nothing to do with whether you are being a villager or non-educated. It has everything to do with, are you delivering what I want? Under my circumstances, pricing, delivery time, volumes and everything, are you delivering it? Number 2, if you are doing that, are you able to compete with another supplier coming this time from Brazil, coming this time from South Africa, supplying a similar item? Will you deliver it? If you don't, you can glorify yourself as a parish model, as a Myoga, as Uganda, as Iteso, whatever title you want to give yourself. Live with it. The market will not take you on. So there is a lot of homework to be done, and that's why I feel that that arm of government that has got its job carved out to monitor these good interventions should have a team for which contracts are premised on either giving us lessons why the thing is not working or actually delivering what we have been dying for. 200 billion is a lot of money. And we are saying it is small because it should have been 490. But we are starting from 200. In the private sector, that resource, if it's properly channeled and in a manner where you are saying, we want to take you forward away from where you were, if it is done well, the 200 billion at the end of a year should be hitting some 300 billion.
Great. Now, Sarah, coming back to you, one of the issues that is coming out, or that really caused quite some good discussion, is the issue of rental tax. And I saw, of course, we had invited our friends from Kampala City Traders Association. They made a lot of noise about it.
They did.
But, of course, they didn't manage to make it. But it is something that is valid. And if you speak to a number of SMEs or MSMEs, they'll tell you that one of their biggest expense item is actually rent. And the discussion is, you know, at the risk of biasing you, why is it coming at this point in time when actually some of them have actually been trying to get in talks with their landlords to see whether there are waivers? You saw what happened during lockdowns. A number of them were actually making a lot of noise. Now, from your expert point of view, how best do you think, or do you feel that this was handled well? And if you think otherwise, how best would we have handled this particular element? Of course, beginning with the movement, where we were and where we are today.
Let me, thank you very much, Charles. Just to confirm that taxation of property income and specifically rental tax is, has been very key for government. And even you will note in the president's speech that he is always referring to the big shots really not paying tax. He's saying Kampala has grown so much, there is a lot of rental property, but all this
guy is paying
tax. You saw the engagement of the American company to do the survey and really to ensure that this property tax is being collected from each and every commercial property or residential that is earning rental income. So in this year, government attempted to really bring this out very seriously. Already in the last year, the mapping was done and people were registered. Those who did not go were forcefully registered. So now they are trying to streamline the policy. But what came out is that one, if you have rental income, originally before the tax amendment, you would have some tax-free income of 2,820,000 per annum. Okay. That is about 235 per month. Okay. So if you have your mzigo of 200,000 per month, you didn't have to pay rental tax.
You're outside the bracket.
Yeah, yeah. But now that will no longer apply. That has been removed, meaning that if I have my mzigo, I earn 50,000 per month, I will have to pay tax. But again, the brighter thing of this is that out of that gross rent that you receive in a year, 75% of it now is allowable deduction. Okay. They allow that for expenses. Blanket of gross income.
Break that down so that, you know, our viewers
if, for example, I earn rental tax of 100 million per year, I will only be taxed on 25. 75 is treated as expenses that you incurred to generate this income.
Very good. Okay.
So 75 is allowable expenses, 25 is the taxable income.
Great.
So they will tax the 25, but if you are an individual, on the 25, if you had a mortgage and you are paying loan out of that mortgage and there is an interest expense, we will again remove the interest expense on top of the 75, and then you pay the difference to government, but at 30%. Okay. Initially it was 20 for individuals, now it's going to be 30%. Now for companies, it has been 30%, but you would be able to claim all your expenses and get an allowance on the building at 5% per annum. That allowance is to recoup the expenditure you've injected into construction of that building. At 5% per annum, you would be able to claim this for 20 years, straight line amortization. And then if the building was used for industrial, hotel, or hospital operations, you would claim an initial allowance of 20%, and then 80% of the cost, we would apply the 5% industrial building allowance, which again you claim over a 20-year period. Now, from the provision of the law, it's not clear whether you will now be able to still claim this for a company. But my view is that when they give you 75% of the gross income as allowable deduction, it's unlikely that they will give you the deduction for the cost of the building. So we shall see companies also being taxed at 25% of the income and then at 30%. But what is very unique with taxation of rental income is that it is taxed separately. If, for example, I'm a company like Vivo Energy, which may have rental income and its primary business is sale of petroleum fuels, it will pay tax on the petroleum fuels business, which is their core business, and then rental tax will be accounted for separately. At 30% also. Meaning that you may, if you had a loss on this other mainstream business, you can't take it and offset from maybe profit from rental tax. So if you look at rental tax, they are now looking at an approach of taxing based on turnover. And then they don't give you that opportunity to say, these are my receipts that I incurred to generate this expense, and that is it. But there was an issue before, once after Parliament discussed, there was that answer to Parliament, which had some insertion where URA had wanted the taxpayers to be subject to verification of the 75. But as assented to by the President, there is no provision of that 75. All what will happen is that they don't have to verify the 75. You will tax 25 at 30%, and that is it. For rental. So we are thinking that this should really help the tax administrators, URA, to widen the scope of rental tax
base.
Yes. And then two, if they give you 75% as allowable, it really good, sounds good.
It does.
So we think that
huge,
that the population should really be positive to just pay this tax, so that we have everyone contributing to this tax. Yeah.
I think sometimes, Charles, one of the challenges is that some of these policies are not well explained.
Exactly.
Because if you look at the discussion on the rental tax, I mean, it's like a blanket thing.
Yes,
covering everything.
And it's blown out of proportion by somebody putting a 25% as if is whatever you have collected, we are hitting 25% on it.
On everything, yes.
Correct. So communication, education, in my view, is extremely
It's
key.
quite important.
Number two, there are other taxes that are being paid by people who own properties. Ground rent,
Those property rates.
property rates. If we could just ensure that those are 100% collected, it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money.
Absolutely.
But here we are graduating to this, which is, in my view, is fairly mild. The way we're doing it here, we're bringing people in gradually, but enforcing to ensure that the modest figures we're talking about should be applied across everybody.
boards.
Ground rent is not being collected.
I agree.
The moment you just step a few kilometers away, you're supposed to be paying some 300,000 per annum. People are not paying.
Very good.
You multiply that by the number of units or
It's a lot of money.
accommodation.
Yes, it's a lot of money lost.
It's a lot of money. So educating people and keeping the thing within reach, 300,000 ground rent, 250, 400,000, within reach. That should begin to bring people into the tax bracket, and broaden this thing.
Because if everyone picks, you know, the bill they're supposed to pick on tax,
then
it also reduces the burden on the few.
Exactly.
Because there's always been that
Already.
argument
Yes,
that it seems the taxman seems to be focusing on the low-hanging fruit.
correct.
But
The
you know, if you
visible
spread,
fellows are paying the price.
Exactly.
If you are visible, we come for you. The others, no, you remain.
well, viewers, if you have any questions, especially on some of these issues, I know the issue of rental tax has been confusing to number, and you can forward in your question at the question time. There's a WhatsApp number on the screen. We have Sarah here. She's the tax expert in the house today. She can help explain some of these issues and put a lot more context to that. And Charles, I think going forward, we need to engage URA as well to come. and
No,
shed
we
more
will
light.
need to do this because you can see the lack of information and then the way that information mops
Yeah.
until it becomes a big monster and begins to take a political tone.
Yeah.
Or they want to take your house, or they want to take your property. You go and check the real thing is something within your reach.
And even I'm sure there are many defaulters or people who would be paying
Yeah.
and they refuse to keep away
Yeah.
because of misinformation.
Correct.
You know, because if
Correct.
you look at that 25%,
Yeah.
really, if it's explained to someone, instead of running away,
It is.
many
it
would
is
actually come
very,
to the
Yes,
fold.
that's
very
true.
good way of bringing people in. It is so.
Sarah,
Yeah.
moving on again, coming back to you, the issue of data, taxing data. I know it's another issue, Charles, which caused a bit of a debate. You know, that 12% tax on internet at the time when URA is introducing digital stamps, at the time when, of course, there's a lot of appreciation of e-commerce. We are all moving into the vacuum space.
Yeah.
You talked about it at the beginning. And we're seeing a contradiction on policy here.
Thank you, Charles. Actually, taxing data is something very controversial because even when you look at globally, there are a number of economies who are not taxing data. What government should have done is to enable people access this data. Data should be like a stepping stone for people to do e-commerce, to do business on internet, and then now look at how best to tax the revenues being generated from internet.
Yes.
Now, you note from my beginning comments, I said that government has put some, is it about 136 billion into infrastructure on digitalizing the country. Very good, very good. But we want that person in the village to be able to afford this data. To be able to afford this data and do even research on the market. How are the prices of coffee globally? When should I be able to sell my coffee? Can I wait a bit? What are the exchange rates like? That is the type of information that should really be easily accessible. And then in the midst of the pandemic, we can't really be taxing data. Many people are working from home. There is a very huge demand for data, and it should be as cheap as possible. Many people are doing homeschooling and buying data. In the Amendment Acts, assented to by the President, you see there is an exemption on educational institutions and hospitals. So when you exempt the educational institutions, what about the learners who are studying from home? Those ones still have to pay for this excise, this 12% excise duty. And again, we are seeing government taxing electronic services, VAT on electronic services, and there is an amendment to provide for this non-resident taxpayer who has provided electronic services to a Ugandan person, and they have to file VAT returns every quarter, every three months. So if we are able to tax these services, then we should make internet as what? As cheap as possible.
Cheap as possible.
And then also, we also have an issue of the internet infrastructure not being very good. You buy this data and then you are struggling, the internet is not stable, you are doing some learning, you've already paid tax on it.
It's actually non-stable, but the MBs or the GBs are going.
Exactly, so you don't even get value. And on top of that, there is a tax which you have to keep paying.
Yeah.
So, but what I would appreciate is that globally, many governments are looking into taxing indirect taxes as the biggest source, because there is a very big evasion in direct taxes. So they find direct taxes really being like a hollow hanging fruit to keep introducing all the time as a desperate source of income. We think that government should really review this, but again, if it performs better than OTT, maybe they may not review, but it is all about the public trying to see whether this makes sense and communicating really, because we want a very enabling environment. Let people be able to afford that data, and let's take data as a necessity for life, for doing business, for every part of life.
I hear you.
Yeah.
Charles?
Yeah, as she has put it plainly, anything more structured is more likely to be targeted for taxation.
Yeah.
If you are to get a person drinking alcohol and is the one to directly pay you without paying it through the price that the manufacturer of alcohol is doing it, it would have been such a complicated game. But because the brewer has been told there's excess duty on this, we have increased by this, please, as you do your pricing, embed it in. It's done. And this brewer is structured, is captured in the tax system, is easier to focus on and hit.
Yeah.
So anything structured becomes a lazy, easy target for taxation. But it makes us lose out on the real job to build a vibrant economy.
Yeah.
And I say this with a lot of pain, because this week there was a screaming title in one of the dailies in the country saying 1,000 schools are going to be auctioned. 1,000 schools are going to be
Private
auctioned.
schools, yeah.
Wow.
These fellows are battling how to survive a low period in the economy, given what's going on. But of the 1,000, maybe even another 400, we're even suffering on issues to do with basic management principles.
Yeah.
Basic accounting and how to manage an enterprise. And we never speak about them. Those are the fellows who ultimately will broaden our tax base and make us not to touch things like the facilitator called the internet. Internet is the lubricant you need for the entire country to operate. Release it. Let it be totally free.
I hear you.
It's like saying, you know what, hotels, you are the ones facilitating tourism to perform. Can we remove VAT from you and make you now get these fellows to come in and enjoy these facilities, and you invest star-rated facilities? Uganda is being forced right now to accelerate star rating of its facilities. Yeah. But there are many people who have invested in that sector, and we just assume so long as you have been able to put the walls together, you are good to run an enterprise. We need more hard work to get experts like Sarah, experts like Enterprise Uganda, enterprise like auditors and all the other people that can bring an enterprise to grow and enter into a sustainable tax-paying bracket. Right now, I know we are saying the only thing that these fellows need is restructuring their loans. In the budget, government admits that 7.3 loans have been restructured. You restructure those loans, there are issues to do with real managing and reviving those enterprises. We're not talking about them. We're only talking about the financial arm of it. The 4 pillars of running a successful enterprise are omitted.
Yeah.
The pillar of human resources, the pillar of operations, the pillar of marketing and customer care, and the pillar of governance and leadership. We're not talking about them. We're only talking about finance. Agreed, 106 billion added to UDB in addition to 555 billion given to them the previous year is good money. But the takers of that good money should go there with reasonable structures in place. Otherwise, this trillion or the billions we're putting in UDB, we're missing the bigger picture here. That money will enter a hole, to not come out.
I like the point on governance. Because
Yes.
we talked a lot about corporate governance on this show.
Yeah.
And I saw how important it is, one, for the sustainability of that enterprise.
Correct.
But then also having that enterprise as a good citizen in the country.
Correct. The jobs will come there.
The jobs coming, but also being a good taxpayer.
Taxes
and the
will
others,
come
the
in.
obligations.
Here we are all the time, we're increasing our taxes
Yeah.
on the low-hanging fruits that Sarah just mentioned.
Yes.
But if we do our tax against GDP, it's still low.
It is low.
Why? Only few people are captured.
It
Only
hovers
few
between 12.5 to 13%.
Yes,
Against
only
the
few.
sub-Saharan average of 17%.
But those who are really paying it, they really feel it.
Yeah,
definitely.
that's true.
They
That's-
really feel it.
And that's the challenge. We'll hold it there, gentleman and lady. Viewers, it's the Business X Ratio, and we are trying to look at the 2021-2022 financial budget, trying to put it into context for what it means for the micro, small, and medium enterprise. Now, when we come back, we're going to look at a number of very interesting areas. Of course, we talked about indirect tax, and that brings in the aspect of fuel. Yes. We added another 100 shillings to the fuel tax, but then most importantly, many had built this budget to be a recovery budget, given what we are contending with. But we'll try to put all that into context after this very short commercial break. Welcome back, viewers. It's once again the Business X Ratio, and today we're trying to put the 2021-2022 financial budget into context, especially for the SME. You can add the micro operator there. We've touched on a number of areas. Of course, we looked at the issue of taxes on the internet or tax on the internet, the issue of broadening the tax base, where the 44 trillion is going to come from, especially the bit that is supposed to be met domestically. And now we can look at the aspect of fuel, Sarah, because one of the issues again that came out quite strongly before the budget was on the proposal when it was brought to the fore that I think at first the discussion was to reintroduce the license, the old license.
Yes, the 200,000 per year per vehicle.
Exactly, and it was ferociously fought.
Yes.
And the taxman had to repackage. Minister of Finance for that matter and to become an indirect tax again on fuel.
Yeah.
How do you look at that move, and what do you make of that? Because we now know that another additional 100 shillings as tax was added on to each liter of fuel we put in the car or in the generator or in any of the engines.
Thank you, Charles. What I note with the fuel is that historically government has made it a culture to always put that 100 shillings on fuel every year. Okay. And this is really very, it's a very, very adverse effect to almost all sectors of the economy, because transportation will affect the entire price of almost everything. Remember, in the first place, we are a landlocked country, and so as soon as that 100 was announced, you saw if you are driving and you see the petrol station price list, it's now over 4,000 per liter. You put 50,000 and you get 11 liters. So everything becomes very expensive. You are a tomato seller and you have to get a border to go to the market to go and sell those tomatoes, which was now, the transport was maybe 2,000, it now goes to 3,000. It affects every part of the economy. We are transporting maybe charcoal from the villages, bringing it to town. It will translate into a higher cost. So this is really an indirect tax that impacts everyone. And if I can just explain, indirect taxes have a regressive effect. What I mean by that is that it impacts everyone regardless of the income gap, incomes, whatever. If you are rich, you will still pay that tax. If you are poor, you will still pay that tax. So it is something that government really needs to reconsider. There are taxes that will affect each and every person regardless of the income status. And this will definitely hurt the economy and especially the micro and small and medium enterprises that are really struggling with very small margins and trying to survive really.
I hear you. Charles, what do you make of this going forward? I mean, what would you feel would be the right move in that case? Because you see, we also looking at government that is desperate.
Yeah.
And I think we have reached that point to mobilize resources domestically.
Yeah.
You also look, you have a taxman there who is coming out of a deficit. Yeah. Where they fail to beat target. And now maybe to amend it a bit, what would be the best areas to touch?
You know, when you're operating in an environment where you want productivity and competitiveness to be one of your drivers, you want to make sure that you do not create uncompetitiveness based on some macroeconomic intervention. It should be just somebody somewhere who has failed to harvest on time and has made losses. But the moment you impose this blanket thing here, as a nation, you've just given that burden, that weight, that makes you drag. We had managed to make sure that as a country now, our poultry products, chicken, eggs, go to Kenya and compete effectively. The cereals go to Kenya and compete effectively. The effect of this indirect tax is to try and water down some of that opportunity that were built. And I pity and I really sympathize with the tax body because all this is coming mostly because where can we quickly touch and get taxes with a limited headache? As I said, it would have been much better to assist hotel or tourism investors to become bigger quickly and faster because as a nation, we have a competitive advantage on tourism when it gets back on its feet. The same thing can be said about the education sector. The same thing can be said about even adding value to many things that we are now trying to add value to. If we did that, we would be creating what you call reliable, dependable, broad-based source of taxable income. And you would cease trying to traditionally torture the same avenue. We go for drinks. We go for petroleum products, traditional suspects.
Beer.
We go for beer. These fellows, then now the buildings, whose building is that one? Has he paid this tax? Whoever is visible, whoever can be captured, you concentrate on them. In the process, you send the economy into underground. Sometimes you even ask yourself, why would Uganda have less than 20 listed companies for more than 20 years of a stock exchange in this country? Why would a country not be very attractive to bring in joint venture partners? It is because this is a section where you do all the things that create visibility and strength. You've entered that bracket that must be grabbed. So go underground. Avoid going to joint venture partnerships. avoid going to a stock exchange.
Because if you go underground, definitely you disqualify yourself
Yes,
from that space.
So in a way, I just feel if this thing is being done for a short-term strategy, it's something you could live with. But come another 12 months, you add another 100 shillings. Come another 100, you add another 100 shillings. Out of the 1,400 shillings.
1,400, yes.
1,400, yes. Tax, I think, takes, I don't know what portion.
Of the liter.
Of the liter.
Yes. Because that's 1,450.
Yes.
Is on each liter you put on
Correct.
into you know, that engine.
The fuel station is hardly getting 50 shillings out of it.
Yeah.
You know? And no wonder very few Ugandans can run a fuel station for more than 5 years. Because you are there running a fuel station which is heavily taxed. Any loss of 1 jerrycan of fuel, you've lost revenue for 3 months.
You're actually a tax collector.
So it's tough indeed.
Quite interesting. But I'm sure probably, you know, someone is listening and they will, you know.
Yes, and we begin to go the tough route of doing the things.
Absolutely. Sarah, moving back to you. Of course, we are into the East African community, East African Common Market. Charles, we seem to be losing a ball on the ESC discussion. Of course, looking at all the non-tariff barriers, all the circus that comes with, you know, country X trying to access the market here and blocked, and here trying to access the market there and blocked. But we came up with a very good culture some time back, about 7 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, or 6, where all East African countries read the budget on the same day.
Yes.
The idea was to align tax policy,
Yes.
which again feeds into
Yes.
the way we trade,
Yeah.
movement of goods and
Yeah.
services. I don't know, when you look at the proposals, because Sarah, I know you are at a vantage point to actually do, get an overview of what's happening in the region. If you look at what was announced in Kenya, Tanzania, do you see coherency in our tax policy across the region? Are we swimming in the same direction?
Thank you, Charles. Actually, we did our budget breakfast on Friday, and one of the participants was asking exactly the same question. We've been reading the budgets every Thursday, which is what happened. But what happens is that even the Council of Ministers would sit and even agree on the same theme for the entire East Africa. But this year around, the themes were different. Tanzania had its own different theme. Uganda had its own different theme. And the Council of Ministers didn't sit.
I think COVID has disorganized
and,
us.
yeah, COVID, I think COVID must have really affected. And then we are supposed to be in a common market for East Africa. And these goods should be able to freely trade as one block. Even within our domestic laws, a citizen is defined as a citizen of East African community. So if you are a Kenyan, you can be a citizen in Uganda within the domestic tax laws. If you look at Kenya, Kenya emphasized the big 4 agenda in their budget, and they looked at specifically health, food security, affordable housing, and manufacturing. Uganda also looked at similar things, really. Maybe we just didn't have the affordable housing, but Uganda's budget looked at largely that. And then Kenya specifically put economic stimulus as something very, very key in their budget with an allocation. And specifically on the tourism sector.
You see that?
They have looked at sports, culture, recreation, and hospitality. They are really focusing into that, and Kenya is a tourist destination you will appreciate. So they are looking into that. And then digitalizing the economy is also their focus, which is the same for here. And then in their key tax issues, Kenya looked at expansion of digital taxation. Taxing the online businesses, which Uganda has also looked into, and that is where we are saying, let's tax the digital businesses, but enable the tax. Let the data be cheaper.
Correct.
Then Kenya has also repealed, initially Kenya had capped tax losses. If you continue reporting losses for 10 years, then they tax you based on turnover. They have now removed that, and allowed for tax losses to be carried forward indefinitely. Uganda has a similar thing. Kenya also has increased on the statute of limitation. Initially they would allow taxpayers to only keep records for 5 years, but now they have increased to 7 years. Tanzania also read their budget the same day on Saturday, like I had indicated, different themes, but in terms of allocation, theirs is the traditional allocation of 37% development expenditure, 24% debt repayment. We are all struggling with debt repayment. Uganda is no exception. And then 12% wages. But Tanzania specifically on VAT, there is VAT exemption on the services, goods and services to the East African Pipeline Company. You know, we already have a pipeline which is going to run from Tanzania to Hoima. Uganda should have also looked into that. And then they have also zero rated for VAT transportation services of crude oil. They are preparing themselves for that crude oil. And I think Uganda should have also picked a leaf on that. And then they are exempting interest income on treasury bills and treasury bonds. If you buy from government and you are able to wait for 3 years, no tax to be paid.
Wow.
If you compare with Uganda, for Uganda, if you keep for 10 years, there is a 20% withholding tax. If it is more than 20 years, it's 10%. So ours is really a long wait. So basically, and then Tanzania introduced a 10% excise duty on motorcycles, which are more than 3 years. I think trying to grapple with the border economy. I think, I don't know if we can think about that
as well,
to expand the tax base. It's also something Uganda can look into. And then they have also introduced a 2% withholding tax on agricultural supplies. Uganda had introduced it some 3 years back, but it was repealed. I don't know whether it didn't work, but I really think this tax must be shared equally. Everyone must pay something small to this government. So I'm thinking, when Charles, you said, where can the government tax? I think the agricultural sector remains untaxed. If they can pay something small, it would be okay, really. If now that government is investing into
the sector.
Yeah.
Great.
So Tanzania also looked into taxing the small mining economies, people in the mining sector.
The artisanal miners.
Yeah, small tax. So basically, that is it for the East African economies.
Thank you, Sarah. I think that gives us very good context. Before I go into the questions, I want just to pick your mind, both of you, briefly, because there was a lot of expectation for this budget. Many were looking at it as a recovery budget, or one to carry that kind of message, language, or tone. Do you see it, starting with you, Sarah, and then Charles?
Of course, if you look at government has tried to put in measures to support especially sectors which were adversely affected. Last year they announced waivers on penalty and interest on all tax areas as at 30th June 2020. But again, that has not worked in very well, because a number of taxpayers did voluntary compliance, because it was voluntary compliance. Even if you just declare voluntarily, you would get a waiver of that coming out of COVID. That was very good. But it hasn't been very good, because government, there is an allocation criteria that government has done, specifically the URA. You end up getting some tax again to pay, even when you didn't expect. And the cutoff is 30th June. So meaning that if I'm doing voluntary disclosure this year, I have to pay interest from July to date, July 2020. So government has decided to invest into Uganda Development Bank, put some loans there for SMEs. What I know is how many of these loans have been dispersed. I really don't know. Maybe my friend Charles can comment on that. And then also a number of loans have been renegotiated on behalf of some business people. But again, we want to see government coming more, like the way you saw the Kenyan budget. put a budget to really see how the economy can be
Stimulated.
so that you can be able to collect this tax. Like, for example, the tourism sector was adversely affected. Total affected, hotels are empty. How can these people come back into business, even when things become better? So that is the thing that we wanted government to come back into and talk about it better.
I hear you. Thank you, Sarah. Charles.
Yeah, Sarah's touched very key areas. First of all, those people who already borrowed or had some loans.
Yeah.
7.3 trillion to date have been restructured.
Yeah.
And it was the first time for BOU to say, officially, please, Mr. Commercial Banker, we allow you to restructure a loan 3 times. And the last opportunity to do that is 1st September this year. In my view, that might be a bit too tight. They could give this year and probably even next year. Provided in a way you are saying the only thing affecting this thing really is the recovery of the sector. It's not the fault of the investor in the hotel sector. It's not the fault of somebody who has invested in a school. So please tolerate them. And if to a possible, government will now say, okay, to demonstrate that we associate with the need to rescue these specific sectors, we will probably give a subsidy of interest to the banks that you are losing by waiting to collect that money. But the bankers should also take part of the loss. But the principal should be fully recovered, collected. So to me, that loan restructuring was a good thing. It was a stimulus. It was really something to recognize government for. The other one, which I feel is not fully executed, is government paying its domestic arrears. The estimate is about 4 trillion government owing to the private sector. Last year, according to Honorable Lugolobi, they almost paid $500 billion out of 4. Somebody is waiting for the balance a year, then a second year, then it is continuing to recur. To me, unless these are just court pronouncements and not services offered by private sector, it is bad to over delay releasing 4 trillion to the private sector.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, the stimulus, although it's not specifically mentioned, has been injected in different areas of the economy. I only just want to feel that as we do these injections, the beneficiaries should tone down the aspect of imagining that this is political reward. The northern region is getting 200 billion for cattle restocking. The vets should be on board. All the professionals should be on board. The people doing the procurement of the animals should be on board. Preparing the farmers who are receiving these animals should also be done. It's a stimulus. I know it is something which is a reparation for all the losses incurred in that region. But this can be a big, big stimulus that can be...
can turn around things.
Yes. And then coming to what we are put in our own bank, UDB. UDB must be encouraged to exercise independent, solid professionalism in appraising these loans. Then UDB should be told that the following sectors are the beneficiaries of these soft loans. You could reduce the loan. Right now it's at 12%. I don't even mind if government said it can even be 8%, but should be somebody who will take that money and bring it back. And do not get so worked up if UDB takes 3 months, 6 months to confirm that this borrower is going to take and bring it back. Because more people are going to run that route with all types of fake requests and then raise political voices. Oh, my thing has taken 90 days. Oh, they don't respond to me. Oh, these people are not using the stimulus the way it's supposed to be. You need to safeguard a government entity that has been given the label of saying the holder of a stimulus in a situation where everybody is gasping for oxygen.
Thank you, Charles. We have some limited time to go through the questions of our viewers, quite a number, so I'll encourage us to be as brief as possible.
Yeah.
I'll go to it right away. Jonas from Nebi is asking Sarah, could you kindly differentiate for me the difference between rental tax and property tax and where each lies, i.e. collected by the local government or central government? Briefly, Sarah, you can go for that.
Thank you, Charles. Rental tax is collected by URA. It's a tax on income from that property that you are renting out or letting out. Then property tax is a local government tax, which is collected based on the Local Government Act. So this is like here, it will be either KCCA or the municipal council where you are in, or the town council who are supposed to collect these property rates. Thank you. I think that
And
is.
are they uniform, or each municipality does their own?
No. They don't even meet. There is a way in which property taxes are computed based on the Local Government Act, and then rental income is collected by URA based on the Income Tax Act.
I also have Amy here from Kampala is saying, isn't that double taxation? You can help us
Yeah,
clarify.
it is by different arms of government, exactly. Tax on tax, yeah, on the same income, that's true.
Okay. Charles, I have Joseph here, Sempija from Tinda, is saying we have a problem of communication, no proper explanation for these policies, and politicizing of everything to the extent that MPs can't explain to the public. And I think that's the discussion we're talking about.
Well, we actually, and I'm so happy for this platform, because this platform is sponsored by the Ministry of Finance, by Insurance Association, by Abbey Trust. We're also looking at getting more partners to come on board, and we feel the Uganda Revenue Authority is likely to be happy to be part of this platform. Because as you can see, when you listen to the rental income tax, it is something that this country can start saying, it's a good start, you know. But then the information out there is saying they have started to take rental income, and they are coming to pick whether I collected rent or I didn't. This thing is saying, did you collect rent?
Yes.
If you collected it and you have expensed 75%, can you give 30% on the other 25%? In other words, you collected rent. If you didn't, I don't think under this arrangement they will still come for their tax. But Sarah is here to confirm on that one.
Exactly.
You
Sarah?
didn't collect rent because tenants are not paying.
They will not tax you for that.
You see?
Because there was no income. Of course, tax is based on accrual.
An accrual.
Yeah, but if there was no income, that would have been a vacant house.
Correct.
Yeah, like now in COVID.
Yeah.
I hear you.
You didn't collect and there is nothing to
nothing.
declare. Yeah.
Yeah.
Quite a number of questions on rental tax here, actually. I have someone
You
here
can see the
saying
interest.
you are in it to educate people on rental tax, because
Very
I'm
good.
seeing the house owners transferring the burden to the tenants, and this will make accommodation expensive. I think he's trying to now
Actually, the current proposal makes rental tax quite affordable. We think that everyone now should really go and declare that tax and pay it, because it's going to be a small share, a small contribution by each and every one.
Is it
Yeah.
possible, Sarah, at this point to probably see to what extent government can say, can we forget the past and we start with this particular case starting this financial year?
Actually, that's what government did. All the rental tax registrations were done effective 1st July 2020.
So
They
that should be the
understood that there was COVID. They didn't want to go back and look for.
very good.
Yeah, so you can just.
Now I have another interesting one. I don't know whether Sarah you can attempt this. It's from someone in Barara. He's saying, I'm called Mary from Barara, and I would like to know how to handle the issue where I'm renting a business shop and the landlord fails to pay property tax as required. Because there's that worry.
Yeah,
because
they
when
can
the
lock
local
it up.
authorities come, they'll lock the premises and that kind of thing. But I don't know whether
The tenant.
legally the tenant can take on the landlord and that kind of thing. But anyway, probably this is
That is actually there was that Act on rental
Yes.
tax
Yes.
on landlords, which was passed by Parliament, I think, the other year, which gives the rights of the tenant and the rights of the landlord and the responsibilities of each of those players. Yeah. But that may be now like a legal matter,
It's a legal matter,
which
exactly.
you have to take on. Yeah.
Very good. Quite a number of questions here on the rental property tax, and then some of the aspects to do with the internet tax, especially the digital taxes. But I'm afraid time is not our best ally at this moment in time. Sarah, what would be your last word as we, we've already concluded 2021, 2020. We are now 2021, 2022. What would be the kind of counsel you would give an SME today on how best, they can prepare themselves with a tax mind for the next financial year?
Yeah. What I would say to the SMEs is that as you grow that business, they are key stakeholders in that business who are regulators for you. There is the tax authority, there is KCCA, there is URSBS, there is the city council on planning, etc. Make sure that all those policies are adhered to, and seek for information. Be part of that circle so that you are able to benefit from this budget. They are talking of the new parish model. You can benefit from it. There is the Myoga project. You can benefit from it. There is another project under Ministry of Labor on women. You can benefit on it. But again, ensure that you are not got off guard on taxes that you are supposed to pay. Tax is part of your responsibility as a citizen, and it's statutory. You have to pay, and it is also a social contract for government to do their part of the services. Provide social services to the same people so that there is some level of confidence in paying the tax.
I hear you.
Yeah.
Very good. Charles?
Yes, I want to tell the SMEs that when it comes to government budgeting process, there are a number of things you can benefit from. Just look at all the different budget lines government is putting out there. If government is saying we're going to be spending 200 billion buying livestock, this is the time to be positioning and asking yourself what livestock are needed. How can I be in the front line? How can I secure this part of the country and be the supplier here? If government is saying we are also going to support more aggressively the distribution of seed, this is the time again for you to check which particular crops is government supporting, because it's not every seed, it's a specific ones. Position yourself. In other words, get interested in a budget for business reasons, for policy, for regulation, for the law, for your own prosperity.
Thank you, Charles, and thank you, Sarah. Viewers, that brings us to the end of this interface today, and I'm sure you've picked very good lessons about the 2021-2022 financial year budget. We'll always do our best, to bring all these topics for you, especially the small and medium entrepreneur out there, because we know it's very, very important. But of course, one of the key take-homes is that line we know very well. Always give Caesar what belongs to Caesar, but at the same time, it's always good to be informed and know where you belong. I've been your host, Charles Boji. Until next time, have a good evening and God bless.